Hello and welcome back to In the Envelope, an awards podcast. I am, as always, your host, Jack Smart, the awards editor at Backstage, your guide to the acting industry and the most trusted name in casting. We are here to give you a behind-the-scenes look at some of the buzziest contenders for the small screen's biggest trophy, the Emmy Award. This season of In the Envelope is brought to you by HBO.
Get your ass in there and then see as much as you can.
Yeah.
Like small theaters, go there and say, I don't have any money. Can I usher for the night?
Mm-hmm.
And can I do the coat check and then watch the second half of the show or some like that?
Right. Hey, Jamie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How was your whirlwind trip to LA?
Yeah, that's right. I had a recent whirlwind trip to LA for the purpose of, interviewing Emmy nominees for this podcast. And I'm really excited to unveil, who it was we talked to and what we talked about. It was definitely a kind of a crazy thing because I flew in from New York and proceeded to just interview Emmy nominees back to back to back to back to back. It was really insane. I did not check into my hotel and get In-N-Out Burger until I was done with the interview marathon.
Well, that has to be done at some point.
It's at the very top of the list. Shout out to In-N-Out Burger. They're our new sponsor for In the Envelope.
Not any good for the East Coast, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally. It was a great day. I mean, I'm so excited to... I guess we can't quite reveal how many we packed in and who was it, but we got some good stuff.
I think we can say how many. It's impressive that you did 4 in one day.
4 in one day. I did 4 in one day, and one involved visiting a set on the Disney and ABC lots. And I think that actors are going to want to hear from people on both coasts, I guess. People want to...
Absolutely.
And I think that was better than the talking over the phone. It's always, good to get an interview in person.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to reduce those phone interviews, and it's great to get these interviews, but there's nothing beats seeing the whites of the eyes and
that's right,
interacting in
the
same room.
Soul staring into the soul, or they stare into
soul.
My soul, and sometimes they reveal secrets about myself. And,
getting a bit meta.
That's coming up next on the podcast. So anyway, speaking of LA and speaking of people stationed there, Bob Odenkirk joined us on the podcast.
Yeah.
And he's, as I'm sure as many listeners know, he's a brilliant actor, introduced in the dramatic scene in Breaking Bad for a couple episodes, and was kind of written to be a more and more important character until he got his own spin-off show, Better Call Saul, a prequel to Breaking Bad, for which he's been Emmy nominated a bunch of times. And we got into it. It was a great interview, wasn't it?
I was thrilled that we got Bob on the show because I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan, and I really love Better Call Saul as well. That's really ramping up there.
Yeah.
But he was very honest about his journey in the industry, and humble and gracious. Yeah, great guy.
Well, and it's interesting to hear from someone who considers himself first and foremost a writer. He, grew up in the Chicago comedy community, like many of our guests, actually. And he has to write every day. It's a compulsive thing. And so he has a lot of really great writing advice. He's written especially for comedy, on the comedy side of things, with sketch shows like Mr. Show, and the more recent kind of revival of that called With Bob and David, with his collaborator David Cross. But of course, he's got a separate form of fandom with the Breaking Bad universe.
Absolutely.
Better Call Saul.
Right, so should we get straight to it?
We should get to it. Let's take a short break and go to our interview with Bob Odenkirk. This episode is brought to you by HBO's original film, Wizard of Lies. Starring Robert De Niro and Michelle Pfeiffer as Bernie and Ruth Madoff, this HBO film's production examines Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Newsday writes, "The acting is impeccable and the direction scalpel sharp." For your Emmy consideration, an outstanding television movie, and all other categories. Bob Odenkirk is an actor, writer, comedian, and 12-time Emmy nominee. 3 of those nominations are for Better Call Saul, AMC's prequel to Breaking Bad. Bob's experience as a writer informs his process as an actor, and at the end of this interview, he reveals how he reverse engineers a script when he receives it into a fine-tuned performance. Here it is, our interview with Bob Odenkirk. Did you ever use Backstage in your early days?
I did not.
You were
I was very focused on doing my own. I was, in a lot of ways, I thought about Steve Martin and Woody Allen as the people whose careers I was trying to copy. Mm-hmm. So just writing my own stuff and putting it up, writing my own stuff, whether it was jokes or sketches. That was my journey. I mean, I looked at Backstage. I would pick it up and flip through it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But but it was so much for theatrical artists, and probably a time when there was more. Everything is more fluid now.
Yeah. Oh, these days, even Backstage casting notices have changed. Yeah.
And wonderful. I think
sure.
It's only for the good as an artist, I think.
I agree.
And
it's the golden age of television, so there's plenty of TV roles.
Wonderful TV roles, wonderful TV writing, but also people then moving over and doing live theater.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to Tom Hanks. He's going to do some Shakespeare here.
Oh, yeah.
Soon after
Tom
his
Hanks,
vacation.
and I assume you were talking to him on the set of The Papers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I also wanted to ask you, because here we are on not quite radio, but you have experience with the audio and with the airwaves before. That's where you first honed your comedy chops. Is that right?
Absolutely. When I was a kid, I loved The Credibility Gap, which was a comedy radio troupe out of Pasadena. Mm-hmm. That featured Michael McKean and David Lander and Harry Shearer.
McKean.
Yeah, when he was just out of college, yeah.
Very cool.
He did a comedy radio show, and they put out 2 albums, and I had one of them. And I also loved the Firesign Theater. And Steve Dahl was a comedy host in Chicago who made me very happy.
Cool.
With his funny, casual, crude, and cynical outlook.
I mean, that must have informed you. I keep thinking that you just have so many different influences.
Yeah, I really do. I really do. I really feel like these. Maybe it was the gift my dad gave me by not being around.
Right.
You're looking for. How do you build, how do you be in the world? Mm-hmm, and so, for me, all these different comedy influences. But, the thing about theater, and you asked me about Backstage, and my feelings towards theater are interesting because I did a play. One of the first things I did when I moved to Chicago was, and I helped finance it with money I'd inherited. A production of Line by Israel Horowitz. It's his most famous play, I would think. It ran for 13 years off Broadway. Mm-hmm. Pacino was in it, and as well as he was in Indian Wants the Bronx, which Israel wrote. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
you self-produced it.
Well, I helped with the production of it and played a major role in it, and that was the only theater I did in my life.
Oh, wow.
That play. And it was a great experience, but...
why haven't you done it since?
My fallback position when there's not work in front of me is to take out a piece of paper and try to write something.
Yeah.
It's never to search for somebody else's work that I can put on. It just isn't. It's just where it's just a natural place that my head goes to immediately. And the only thing I can think is I started to rewrite Richard III
Oh, wow. As a comedy?
Because I've always struggled. I've always wanted to like Shakespeare, and I've read all these books about Shakespeare because I find him fascinating, and I find the effort to discover Shakespeare funny. You know, all the work people have put into trying to find out who he was and what is true. There's a great Bill Bryson book about Shakespeare.
So you're fascinated by Shakespeare.
So, yeah, I want Shakespeare to work for me, but I struggle with it. So I thought, what if I just took it and rewrote it so that it made sense to me? You know, looked at each line, tried to figure out what it meant, and tried to put it in words I could understand, which has been done a million times by other people who are better than me. But I would do a shitty version and present that to the public.
Interesting.
Here you go, shitty Shakespeare.
And you just did that just because you wanted to study it.
I'd like to try to make it work for me. I'd like to really understand it. Yeah. And of course, probably the purist would be like, well, then learn Old English, you lazy bones.
Yeah.
Don't rewrite him. Just learn how to speak in that cadence and with those meanings, but I don't know. We'll see if I ever get there.
Well, and I think there's a ton of structural learning from Shakespeare, right? Like the way that the 5-act structure and the way that the comedies are formed versus the tragedies. I mean, that's similar to sketch writing, right?
Yeah, it's probably more similar to film writing.
Yeah. Or Better Call Saul. Maybe Better Call Saul is Shakespeare.
Or Better Call Saul. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people reference Shakespeare when they talk about the writing of Breaking Bad, and maybe even more so with Better Call Saul. Yeah, interesting. I mean, the family dynamic being so powerful, and the drives of retribution and conquering people, like basically trying to conquer each other.
Yeah.
Individually.
That very direct conflict. Yeah.
Yeah. It is, I guess, Shakespearean. I cannot speak from great knowledge.
Well, it's an amazing show. It's so interesting to me that I was reading up and I saw in an interview that Vince Gilligan actually said that he has no idea how Jimmy McGill becomes Saul Goodman. I don't even think he said this that long ago. Like, this was maybe even 3 seasons into this show. You're in a prequel. You're playing a character who we've already seen, and we've seen his kind of end result, but he's very, very different in this show, and we see glimmers of the later character. Does that scare you as an actor? That the
yes,
creator,
for sure.
Yeah, that he has kind of no idea exactly how he's going to get there?
No, because I have such faith in Vince and Peter Gould, the two people who are finding this story every day and searching it out. And I also would present to you, and I think Vince would agree, that it's not a huge comfort, but there's a little bit of a safety valve in that Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, who we all know, we never knew him personally. We never knew his personal life. We saw him in a certain aspect of his daily existence, which is his work. And he was, presenting himself in a certain way that he admitted was fraudulent and a put on. And so with a few exceptions, with very few exceptions, everything he did fit this persona that he was playing at his job. And so we don't know what his personal life was like. There's a lot of aspects of Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad that they can fill in and we can't argue with because we never saw it. Right. So while it's true that they have to get to this character and that these guys, by the way, they like writing themselves into a corner. They have to because they do it over and over and over.
Totally. And they get out of it by these really compelling but always logical for the characters ways.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, it does make sense. They work so hard to get there. They really suffer for their work. Yeah. And it pays off, though, because they're wonderful thinkers about human behavior. I think they think on a deep level, and they don't let themselves take easy outs. And they really study a person's motivation, and then they go deeper than that. They go what could be beyond that to drive the person. But in the case of Saul Goodman, I don't know if we'll do it, but it might be interesting to see him during the time period of Breaking Bad.
Oh, wow.
And maybe see some dimension to him that we never saw.
That personal life you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, his personal life and who he might have been really. I mean, when I did Breaking Bad, I assumed Saul went to work, then he went to the strip club and ate his dinner at the strip club.
Yeah, accurate.
And then went home with one of the girls, or in some way hired a companion for the night.
Sure.
And then woke up, and then
any of this backstory that has come out in Better Call Saul. None of that detail was in your mind.
Yeah. What are you saying?
Like, you certainly didn't, when you first encountered this character of Saul Goodman, no one knew anything about that he was overshadowed by his brother, and he had this very complicated relationship.
We didn't know any of that.
Right.
But what I did know was that he was presenting a front. He admits that in the first episode he's in.
Totally.
This isn't me. My name is James McGill.
Yeah.
This is just a fake name I took to attract the
swindle people,
homeboys. Yeah. And and just in that monologue that he gives in that first time Walter White comes in his office, you can build a lot around that. There was enough there for me to know that, everybody does have a persona at work, and everybody does have a private persona, or rather a persona when they're with their family or with their significant other, and then they have yet another when they're alone. I mean, come on now. A lot of things in the world a lot of drama in the world comes from finding out what a person does when they're actually alone.
Yeah.
Not even with their husband or wife or partner.
Yeah.
And that can be contradictory to who they are in every other aspect of their life. And so I think that I was very aware of that. So I didn't feel, what was great about that was I didn't feel the need to fill that stuff in. I knew I was a guy who was putting on a front, who was a mercenary character, who was in it for himself and kind of admitted that. I mean, really just kind of, that's implied in his speech to Walter is, I am a movable feast. I will go wherever I can eat best, and I don't care. So I don't have any scruples.
Yeah.
And so...
Very showily unscrupulous as a character.
Yeah, and so by knowing that, I know that I'm playing just a front.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that was indicated in the words was a spirited character. He's entertaining. Yeah, theatrical. He's entertaining himself. He's distracting. Yeah. He's running sort of logic circles around the person he's speaking with.
Yeah.
So all this stuff was, apparent in the words.
And I want to hear so much about that the first time you read that script and read those lines. Wasn't Saul originally supposed to just be in 3 episodes?
Well, I don't really know, but basically what Vince told me, they asked me to do, they said they needed me for 3 or 4 episodes. And I said I could only do 3 because the 4th episode, which was the final of the season, I was already signed up to do How I Met Your Mother, where I did a fairly short recurring part on a couple episodes there. So I knew I couldn't do that 4th one, but they weren't even sure yet if they needed me. In the end, they used Mike in that episode they brought the Mike character in, who was sent by me.
Right.
And as a result, Mike was born.
Totally.
And which is great for Better Call Saul and every other thing.
Yeah. And here you both are Emmy nominated.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I know. It's this is a crazy story, and there's one of the great things about showbiz is good things can happen out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And obviously lots of bad things can happen, but that's true anywhere you go in the world, any job you do. But in showbiz, where there's a need for new material is worth something just for being new. And that's kind of really great for all of us, whether you're a writer or an actor or producer. The various buyers or the audience wants to see a new, fresh idea.
Yeah.
And that alone counts for something.
Amazing. Well, and I think about that moment too, because before you first got that script for Breaking Bad, you, correct me if I'm wrong, you considered yourself first and foremost a writer and not as much of an actor.
Oh, yeah.
And has
No
that
question.
changed now?
I don't...
Because with Bob and David, it's so terrific.
Thank you. Well, that I do think about my acting career. I do think about what I can do next and what would be a challenge or what I would like to try to do. But I can't help looking at the world as a writer, waking up every day and thinking, I better get some paper and write something today. And very often I don't. And so I go to bed feeling shamed.
Wow. And that's what
Like a
drives
good
you to
writer.
translate Richard III into shittier English.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
That's so cool.
It's absolutely true. Well, I'm writing a book right now about my career, my brilliant career.
Oh, cool.
And it is very much with the thought in mind of people who are, trying to make it in the business.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Because I feel like I've gotten to do a lot of different things. And I've also had ups and downs. A lot of people think, I don't know, I guess they think I've only had ups.
I think that's how
But
it
I
always
don't know.
works. Yeah.
I think if you take apart my IMDb page, you'll definitely see some downs. And I want to share the excitement of that whole journey.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a book for Backstage users, for the early career actor types. Yeah.
Honestly, it very much is. It's, it's a book that I'm hoping parents and relatives will buy their kids who are trying to make it or considering a career in the business, and then those same parents will regret it when the kid reads it and goes, yeah, according to Mr. Odenkirk, I'm making the right choice by going into showbiz. Wait, no, that's not what the book's supposed to tell you. It's supposed to keep you from going into it.
Oh, I mean, that can be good advice too. It's so interesting the fact that it's so true. Your career has been all over the place, and of course people see the ups more than they see the downs. But I didn't realize that you are really one of those writers that you can't go to bed, on a day that you haven't written, feeling kind of empty that day. That's so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to when I was 14 or 15, and I at first thought, I love reading so much, and I thought maybe I could be a writer, a novelist,
Cool.
And I kept a journal and I wrote every day, and it was all bad. I mean, and I did that for maybe 15 years, and I threw it all away, all of it.
Wow. Yeah.
It was just so bad. It was just the worst brain dripping nothingness.
But you need that to get better.
Well, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I was without a doubt attracted to sketch comedy. So it overtook any pretensions I had to being I keep wanting to say a real writer. As though it is a little different.
Sure.
But
I mean, I consider you a real
the
writer.
same is true now. I mean, it's still true. I'm writing this book, and every time I try to write like a fiction writer, I read it the next day, and it's just the worst horrible shit. You know who's a great writer is Norm Macdonald.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you saw his biography that he wrote. This
No.
very funny and very fictive nonfiction that he wrote. That he is just a wonderful. He writes great sentences. He drops imagery all around and impactful stuff. It's just I wish I could write as well as him, but it's okay. I'm going to write as well as me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to try to be honest. And this is the challenge because I come from comedy, and the desire is to make fun of whatever, yourself, the sentence, the memory, the incident, to exaggerate and ridicule. And I don't. In the end, that just wouldn't be that. I'm going to have fun with it, and hopefully it'll be entertaining. But I feel like if I don't tell the truth, it's really worthless. It's just a waste of paper. So I also think, I know what it's like to wonder about what is life in show business? What is that like? How does it feel? How do you, for a person who's gone to a lot of different places in the business, what is the experience of that,
Uh-huh.
And I'd like to help people understand what that is. And I think, there are people certainly who go into this in the hopes of becoming a big star. And that never drove me and was confusing when the amount of celebrity I have is confusing to me. But what about the people who go into it for a different reason, for the reason of they really enjoy the work of it, whether it's writing or putting up a show or acting.
Right.
It makes them smile and makes them really, it's a great reward to do it.
Right.
What about that person? Can the business be rewarding overall for that person, and in what way? And that's sort of what I want to explore.
Yeah, and it seems like it's sort of rewarding in ways that you can never quite expect. Like, certainly in your case, no one could have predicted that someone who started in the Chicago theater comedy scene, SNL, that kind of, and then super, super into sketch comedy, and then suddenly Breaking Bad. Like, that is a left turn. And as you're saying, the level of celebrity, I'm assuming, kind of shot upward with Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah.
And now I do feel like you're best known as Saul Goodman or as Jimmy McGill.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But at the same time, there's still a huge number of people. If all I had was the people who know my comedy, I'd still have an audience that I'd be extremely proud of, and and I could continue making projects with just that audience around me.
Yeah, because Mr. Show had a cult following for sure.
Mr. Show, Tenacious D, Tim and Eric, all that stuff, all bundled up, is enough to make a career for sure.
Yeah,
that would make me very happy.
Right,
it did make me very happy.
Yeah.
And then you add this new, very different thing on top of it.
Right.
And I want to do right by this opportunity, but I have a strange relationship to it. But it's a good one. I think it's a healthy one overall.
It's so interesting. Yeah, and I mean, if a lot of this too is you as a producer. I mean, is a producer hat different from the writer hat or the sketch writer hat?
Oh yeah, I think it is.
And I assume being a producer on a drama is different too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you want to suck the joy out of art, become a producer.
Oh, no.
Unless you are naturally a producer.
Sure.
In which case you'll have a great time.
Those kinds of people.
But if you're a writer or a director or an actor, I feel like adding that producer hat is something everybody wants to do, and it's understandable, and you kind of have to do it at a certain level. You really should do it, at least for the experience of it. But really, it is a way of sucking the fun out of it. Oh, God, I heard a great quote. Oh, I'm not going to remember this. Oh, I should attribute this quote. Matthew Reese told me this. I think it might be Patton Oswalt. No, might be Patton Oswalt.
Uh-huh.
If you're hearing this, please help me find whose quote this is. They said, being a director, writer, producer, any of those jobs is like being the parent of a baby. You want to take care of it. You stress. Every night you go to bed thinking, oh, man, I think I screwed up today. Oh, I think I messed up the baby. I screwed up their psyche. I didn't do it right. I know I can do better. Oof, I screwed up. I got to do a better job tomorrow. And being an actor is like being the uncle of a child with lots of candy in your pocket. And you come and you give them all the candy you want, and you have a good time, and then you leave and sleep great and don't even worry about it. You don't think twice about what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, you do walk away from the set. And believe me, on this Spielberg project I did, I had a lot of second thoughts dogging me. Did I do a good job? Did I give him what he wants? What is he looking for exactly?
Yeah.
How can I do better next time? But to a great extent, your job as an actor is to be in the moment, right?
Right.
And you really you just be present, and you do it with all that you know about the character, and then you walk away and you clear your mind.
Right.
That's the right thing to do. And with the producing, especially with the producing, you walk away and you think about problems to solve.
Yeah, you can't
either
banish
problems
it
you
from
made,
your mind. Yeah.
problems coming that next day, or problems you made for yourself the day you worked. So I honestly think everybody should do everything. You know,
Sure.
I think if you want to be a director, you should take an acting class and just get a sense of what it's like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you want to be a producer, you certainly should direct something small and know what that feels like. You should write something and have somebody else put it up. You should feel what that suffering is like. You should act. You know, I don't think everybody needs to do it every day, but it's just
right. Try improv, try sketch, try...
Yeah, when you're young, do this stuff. Do all of it.
Shakespeare.
Even if you know what you want.
Right.
You'll just be a better director if you have tried to act. You'll have a better sense of what... You know, when you're acting, I know that when the director says cut, you know... The more experienced you are, the less nervy you are, the less uncertain you are of yourself.
Sure.
But still, you wonder, where are we at in this process after you say cut?
Yeah.
Are we getting there? Is it closer?
Yeah.
Are you cutting because the lighting was wrong? Are you cutting because we were terrible? What just happened? What's the first thing in your mind you want to ask the director? So I know when I direct to say cut, you know, we need to do this whole thing faster, or the lighting wasn't very good, or you guys are great, keep doing that, and then deal with the problem.
Gotcha.
But, you know, first thing I do is give the actor some general sense of what just happened.
Yeah,
and
to keep them focused and in the present, in the moment, like you're saying.
Yeah, and then you carry on dealing with whatever crew issue or lighting issue or camera issue that you have, and the actors have something to chew on for the 2 to 4 minutes it takes, or whatever it takes, to deal with that problem.
Yeah, interesting. And it's funny you say that about the idea of walking away from the show. As an actor, you're the uncle, but as a producer, you can't walk away from any of the logistics of the show, and you got to keep thinking about it, especially when you're the producer of the show that you're the lead role, I assume.
Yeah.
And Bryan Cranston said the same thing. He actually told us that it's true that when your producer hat is on, you have to have that self-critical. I mean, when you're watching yourself on the lens and figuring out how to best tell that story. I mean, is it a bit of a switching of hats, actor, producer, on any given day?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't sweat the production that much on Better Call Saul. And in fact, I didn't ask for that title.
Oh.
Yeah. No, Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould wanted me to share in that title because they're very smart guys. And they knew that, you know, as years went by, if we were lucky enough to carry on, that they would want to have me on their side, all of us together as a team. And I think it's probably smart to have the actor feel some responsibility for the whole project.
Sure.
But honestly, I've produced like the actual job of sweating every detail. I've done it a lot in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that pressure on this show. And I still, to a great extent, refuse to accept the pressure of it. Because I just feel like, also people ask me if I want to direct Better Call Saul, and there's no way.
Really?
I'm just a much better actor because I don't have to deal with any of that. And if there's a challenging scene, and there are often challenging scenes on Better Call Saul that are personal, and a person is, you know, revealing something kind of a deeper motivation. Maybe they're under a lot of pressure. I mean, these guys write the characters into some pretty emotional places.
Yeah.
And as an actor, I need to be able to sit in that vibe, feel those feelings, and live in that space, in that moment for a couple hours maybe while we do that scene. And I can't be taken out of that thinking about logistics or some, you know what I mean?
Totally.
So I am a producer on the show, and I'll weigh in, but very respectfully, to Vince and Peter about, you know, the direction of the show or some bigger concern. And also, occasionally they'll come to me and say, we have this issue with the show overall, and how do you feel about it? And I'll always say, whatever you guys want.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But, you know, on Mr. Show and With Bob and David and numerous other projects, Girlfriend's Day, a movie that I love that I made for Netflix that I'm really proud of, and it makes me smile every time I think about it or watch it.
Totally.
That I was a real producer on. I mean, I really had to think about every choice we made and whether we could afford it, and you know, how to follow through on getting it made.
Right. Without getting into spoiler territory, and I know season 4 is not until 2018 or whatever, but
I know.
Where is this character on the scale from Jimmy to Saul? Like, where is he on that evolution as of end of season 3?
I personally think he's 3/4 of the way there.
Wow. Okay.
I think when he made the choice to, this is, I guess, a spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Do they still do spoiler alerts, or do they just spoil everything?
I don't know how we feel
nowadays
about spoiler alerts on this podcast, but go ahead.
I think that he did some very selfish things in the last season that were avowedly selfish, and he knew what he was doing, and he knew who he was hurting, and he went all in. And I think when he did those things, that was Saul, and I don't know, even though he felt bad afterwards, I think the big difference is Jimmy McGill, everybody who was hurt in his world, most everybody was collateral damage that he never saw coming. And the difference is Saul is a guy who's wised up to the fact that there are victims to his schemes and his shortcuts, and he doesn't care. Yeah. Because he's mad at the world, and he feels shortchanged, and he feels like he has some. He's acting cynically out of anger and frustration and personal sadness that drives him to be selfish. Yeah, and he's fully aware of it. He has he's very conscious of the fact that this isn't good for this person I know. So what? It's good for me.
Yeah, and I love that idea of going all in on that selfishness, because I do feel like the show keeps presenting him with options of like, you could go all in and hurt these people and become more like Saul, or you could not, and he's consciously choosing to go all in.
And I think his justification is, the world has hurt me so much and it won't give me a break. I can't get a break, so I'm going to just take advantage of every chance I can of anybody or anything. And because...
And he's naturally talented at that, at taking advantage of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I do think I said to Peter and Vince that the only thing left is for him to buy some lime green socks. And basically he is Saul. All he's got to do is get the clothes. But I think that's not entirely true, but we're more than halfway there.
Wow, yeah.
At a certain point, by the way, some of this stuff is, it's setting up the dominoes, and then they start to fall, and they just fall and fall and fall.
Yeah.
And I think we're in the falling place now. It's all crumbling down. Now, the interesting thing about Saul, as opposed to Walter White, is obviously in the story as it's being told, he has you could say a fourth act, or I don't know if it's third or fourth act. Slippin' Jimmy, then Jimmy McGill, then Saul Goodman, then Gene, post Breaking Bad.
And we don't know a lot about Gene.
Yeah, potentially he could put his life back together, maybe an arc in an opposite way from Walter White. But right now, to some extent, his arc is like Walter White in that he's degrading as we watch him, and his inner demons are coming to the fore and becoming the powerful, the more powerful angels, driving him along.
Yeah. Gosh, it's what a wonderful gift for an actor. You get to just deal with, you as an actor must sit there thinking about these demons, about these angels and demons in this character, and their writing is so nuanced. You just get to chew on that in every single episode. It's an amazing.
Not only that, I
study.
get to, in the course of an episode, I get to play, and I submitted they ask you what episode you want to submit for the Emmys. If you get nominated, they say, well, submit an episode and we'll ask people to screen it, I guess. And I picked the episode 7, which has pretty much almost pure comedy in it, where he's making this advertisement for a music store in town. And then it has real pain and drama in this scene with a insurance person, and he's crying and sort of letting out a lot of frustration and sadness about his circumstance, which he then manipulates that emotion to manipulate the woman, the insurance adjuster or whatever, insurance executive, into investigating his brother.
Yeah.
So it's just got, to pick up a script and see, 5 pages of comedy followed by, in the same episode, 5 pages of personal revelation and suffering. It's like, what? Who gets to do that?
Totally.
I'm really, it's just ridiculous what I've been given. It's not right. There's no justification for it in my past, and all I can do is be thankful for it, take every moment and play it honestly and be in the moment, and try to be honest in my performance, especially regarding the emotional moments, so that they play honestly and don't come across overplayed or fraudulent.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent advice. Does that double as, I always like asking actors, like, what would you tell your younger, early career artist self? In your case, the, aspiring writer watching Monty Python as a kid, like, Is that kind of staying in the moment and that treatment of the material, is that what you would tell your younger self?
Well, that's certainly what I would tell any actor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, acting is challenging because it's hard. It's the hardest thing to work on in a theoretical manner. You have to just do it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of got a Zen quality to it, a kind of a practice, you know, like meditation is always called practice, you know. You know, and that's all you can ever, the only way to explore it is to practice it, really.
Mm-hmm.
You can read about it some and it doesn't hurt, and it certainly helps to read about how to make a life as an actor, like how do you balance life goals and expectations.
Yeah.
But the thing itself, you just have to do it a lot, you know, or think about it a lot in a meditative type way, where you try to connect with the inner process of being in the moment, which is weirdly, I would say, as a writer, and all the years I spent writing, that's what helped me the most as an actor when I first started doing Saul, was taking the script and doing a reverse engineering of the character based on the writing, which is something I'm used to doing with writing, is taking something that I've written and asking myself, what have I got here as I do a rewrite? Okay. You know, what was driving me? What did I come up with? What did I miss when I first wrote it that's really in there, that's maybe a better joke because I was writing comedy,
right?
Or indicates some real journey for this piece.
Okay.
And so I basically did the same thing with the character as written in Breaking Bad, was take the script, identify what was happening in the character's mind, and by taking apart his words and the emotional thrust of a monologue. It was how I got close to the character. And so I really think that came from writing.
Interesting.
You know, my ability to, whatever ability I had to figure out this character.
And do you do that for every script of Better Call Saul? You would kind of reverse engineer and find the character's arc, or that. Same
with Fargo. Same thing happened with Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have
dramatic.
What you have is you have the script, and you have not just the words, but you have the stage direction. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's a clue in there. And sometimes the clue is, you know, here's a room of people talking and I'm only saying two things. Well, what kind of person doesn't speak up very much?
Sure.
And it could be a person who has no power, or it could be a person who has tons of power and waits for their moment.
Excellent. Well, this has all been, you've just given us really wonderful advice for early career actors, and I think early career writers as well. Is there anything else that early, actors at the beginning of their careers need to know?
You know, one thing I think people do sometimes is they have something they think they might want to do, whether it's move to LA, do a Shakespeare play one day, see if they could do a lead in something, what they would be like as a lead. You just try any way you can to do these things as quickly as you can. You don't have to commit to any of it, but you have to at least, you can't sit and think about it for years and years and years. If you're 24 and you think you might want to go to LA, well, if you have a friend in LA, come to LA, spend 2 weeks, see everything you can, do everything you can, and then go back home. And instead of thinking about this thing that you might do one day and you don't know what LA's like, or New York, you'll have a real, I was in New York. You'll be like, I know what it's like to some extent.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a lead in a Shakespeare play and you think, just do it in some capacity.
Yeah.
Get a couple friends together and read a Shakespeare play and give yourself the lead, and just don't have, you don't have to commit to things, but you do have to try them in reality and not just have them in the back of your mind as something you're hoping one day you might get to do. We get to make these things happen, and even if it's just in a room in your house, you can get people together and you can try these things or whatever it is. You get in there and get to making it. And then do your thinking, do your musing and your planning and your hoping based on something that you've tried.
Right. On that experience. Yeah. And
that's my big advice.
Absolutely. And if you're in a small town in Illinois and you want to move to Chicago and do comedy, you should do that, right?
Well, yes. I mean, you should at least visit Chicago for 3 or 4 days.
Exactly.
If you can crash on somebody's couch, get your ass in there and then see as much as you can. Like small theaters, go there and say, I don't have any money. Can I usher for the night and help? Can I do the coat check and then watch the second half of the show or some shit like that?
Right.
You know, just get in there and then go ahead and go back home. And now when you think about, I wonder if I should move to Chicago, you won't be thinking about something you've never done that gets scarier and scarier every year that you don't do it and gets more mysterious and more mysterious. And it'll be the opposite. It'll be a whole lot less mysterious. And you can either go, oh, yeah, Chicago was terrible. I'm not doing that. Or you can go, oh, I think I know where I'd fit in there, or I got to try again, or I'm not afraid of it. It's not some, unknown.
Wonderful. That's wonderful advice. Thank you, Bob. This has been amazing. That was a great interview for actors, but also aspiring writers.
Absolutely.
Comedy writers, drama writers, sketch Shakespeare, people who want to turn Shakespeare into more relatable modern day language.
Yeah. Actor, writer, producers, or any combination thereof.
And as Bob pointed out, to do a little bit of everything is probably a good move because it will make you better at the thing that you want to do, at your passion, at that thing that's really pushing you.
And it helps you to be more sympathetic to those you're working with, I would have thought.
Right. Because I can't believe how much work it takes to be a producer.
He clearly has a huge amount of respect for Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan.
Yes. And I think that collaborative spirit is evident in his performance. It's such a great show.
Definitely.
What an amazing character study. I'm so glad we got to kind of peel back the curtain on Saul and on Bob. He was amazing.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. Shall we roll credits?
I think it's time to roll credits,
All right.
Let's do it.
Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe for more interviews from the front lines of the 2017 Emmy race. In the Envelope, an awards podcast, is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City and Soundbox LA in Los Angeles. Thank you, as always, to producer, editor, and all-around podcast wizard, Jamie Muffett. You can follow him at JamieMusicNYC on Twitter. You can follow me, Jack Smart, on Twitter at JackSmartWrites. Thank you, as always, to the team at Backstage, the most trusted name in casting. That's Peter Rappaport, Ryan Remstad, Jesse Balashek, Francis Ramos, Mark Stinson, Rawaan Alkhatib, and especially, definitely, without a doubt, Kasey Howe. For more awards and industry coverage, head over to Backstage.com. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time for another glimpse in the Envelope.